Welcome back. We made it. Episode 9. I'm Sam Morgan and I'm coming at you live from Gur Community College. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about how bad I am at AoS3. This one could go for a number of hours. It could be a very long show. AoS3, I am a massive muppet. All right, let's jump into it. So I'm going to run through a game I played recently and talk about some of both the macro and micro mistakes I made. And there's some of those sort of costing me the victory. Possibly look at, how I could have avoided those. But before we jump into that, I thought I'd just talk about probably the two most common mistakes that I've observed. And these ones both happen at the start of the hero phase. This one's a hero phase things. And the first of those is probably the most common heroic action, and that's heroic leadership. So the rules say pick one friendly hero on a roll dice, add 2 if your general's been slain. On a 4+, you receive 1 command point that can only be spent during that turn to allow that hero to issue a command. So there's 2 conditions there after you've hit your 4+. The first is to be spent during that turn as opposed to battle round. So if you roll this at the start of the battle round, then you lose it at the end of the turn there, so it doesn't carry over. And then the other one is for that particular hero. So you've got to be declaring which hero is rolling it, and then you have a separate pool of command point, singular, for that particular hero. And I'm just not seeing people do that, and I think it's it's just a new rule. There's nothing malicious or whatever going on there, but that's just one to keep an eye out for. And certainly in those instances where you get to the end of the battle round and you have 1 CP left and you need it for that clutch inspiring presence, you just want to make sure you haven't accidentally held one over that should have been lost because you didn't use it in your opponent's turn at the start of the battle round. So that's the first one. And then the second one that I've seen a number of times now, and this one I've seen more. I haven't actually seen anyone use Rally to good effect in real life, but I've seen it in sort of written battle reports and battle reports on the internet. The sequencing for this, you can use this command ability at the start of the hero phase, and the reason that start of the hero phase is important for that particular command ability is because obviously there are ways you can hurt yourself in the hero phase, whether that's through taking damn terrain, whether that's through casting an endless spell through your own troops, or a number of other mechanics, which would then open up an opportunity for you to replace models in front of where they started, and that obviously enables you to then project with them for different reasons. So a good example might be if you were to have a unit of Ard boys, for instance, and just say that they'd lost like 10 models over the course of the battle, and you've got the last remnants of that big double reinforced unit of Ard boys, you can then teleport them in the Auric Warclans book, and then if you were to use Rally, you could potentially bring back 10 Ard boys, and that would create less space between you and your opponent. You should be 9 inches away, and it would also, give you an opportunity to do some other sort of little techie things. So just making sure you get the sequencing of that one right does actually have broad implications in the game. So just a couple I've seen. I'm sure there's a million that I'm doing myself, and I'm going to try and hold myself to account. So if I pick up any bad habits, I'll be sure to jot them down in my notebook and bring them up on the show just so I can talk to other people about just the little issues that arise. All right, so today we're going to talk about a game that I played recently with one of my mates at the Model Citizens Club. So it was the first time I'd played this particular scenario. It's called First Blood, and it's one that uses the, more modern scoring style, which is hold 1 objective, score a point. Hold the second objective, score a second point. Hold more objectives than your opponent. Hold the third, score a third point. So usually those score 1, score 2, score more objectives are in scenarios that have 4 or more objective markers. But because this one has only got 3, from the third battle round onwards, potentially you need to be 2 up. You need to be up like 2-0 to be holding more than your opponent, because you obviously, if you're holding 1 each, you're going to split the score there. So this is one where it could potentially be quite difficult to accumulate a large score in turns 3, 4, and 5. So just something to be aware of with that, and something that didn't come into my thinking. I was a complete noob when I played this one, so that sort of that sort of secondary thought process wasn't there. But yeah, with this particular scenario, because you're reducing from 3 to 2, or potentially reducing from 3 to 2, it's a may. You don't have to take an objective off the board if you're going second in the third turn. But yeah, it is something to be aware of, because if, for instance, that middle one were to be removed and you're fighting on two flanks, you could definitely see this becoming a quasi knife to the heart, where neither player really wants to give up ground and they both just castle around a home objective. So certainly something to keep an eye out for. There is an additional special rule in First Blood. It's called Vantage Point, and it's a rule that I think we probably misplayed on the day. We played it as if you go second in the turn and you're controlling an objective, you gain an additional CP. Now, having read the scenario more closely after the game, I think that the way that one works is that you determine the vantage point after you've scored at the start of the battle round. So you score your point, you score your victory points. Let's try that again. You score your command points, you calculate them, you say, yeah, I've got 1 for the turn, 1 for having my general on the board, I've got 2 for, because I'm going second, I've got 1 for having my general on the board. Then you determine the vantage point, and then at the start of the next turn, so that the second turn in the battle round, that's when you'd be getting the vantage point additional command point, I believe. That's my reading of it. It's one of those awfully worded enduring abilities that Games Workshop like to include, where they don't tell you when that ability stops. So there is the potential that 3 games later, if you're playing the same scenario, you keep scoring it, you keep getting that additional command ability, so a command point. I hate the way they do that, but it's so easy to just use cleaner language that includes when the thing when you stop accumulating the thing. But anyway, that's not the end of the world, I guess. All right, so just before the game starts, right, I wanted to talk about the placement of my gnawholes. And yes, this will be a White Dwarf style 1999 to 2005 battle report. That's my era. That's my that's my most exposure to battle reports is through those monthlies, where lo and behold, the army that's just been released had a win rate of 95%. Go and buy those new toys, go get that new army. And it's cool. I remember back when the High Elves and Dark Elves were still predominantly metal rangers, and that they had plastic core units. John Dale, who's still on the English scene now, played a game against Rob Lane, and they were 2 tournament armies, and they played with tactics and strategy, and it was the first time I'd ever been exposed to that, and it was just so cool to read through that back as a however year old, and just see that there is this deeper thinking level of gaming that exists out there. And they took 2 what at the time might be sort of considered relatively middling armies, and they had all of this tech in there, including Rob Lane's High Elves. He'd included this helm that gave you rerolls to save, and he'd coupled that with the enchanted shield, which was the only magical armor artifact in the whole game that you could pair up with other magical armor. And I didn't realize that as a tween. And yeah, he had a 2+ rerolling save on a guy on foot, which was unheard of at the time. And I just thought, wow, that's so clever. So anyway, this is going to be an old school battle report. That's probably a minute 46 tangent you didn't need. So start the game right before we even start to put down units. We determine sides. I'm in the bottom right corner, and my opponent's in the top left. I whack down my gnawholes with the first one there being A in the left center. That is quite possibly the worst spot I could put it. So my thinking, right, is that I'll have a safe gnawhole. I'll have one that threatens the top objective and one that threatens the bottom objective. Where I've placed A, I'm not utilizing the gnawhole's ability to stop my opponent from moving, because you can only fly over it, you can't move over it. I've got it close enough to his deployment zone that he could just walk down and bop it with a monster and destroy it. And there's a chance that if I pop out of that gnawhole, I actually will need to sit on the my sort of table, the length of the board, my table side, meaning my models would need to move around it anyway, because he can screen the gnawhole to an extent, because I need to be wholly outside night. So that's terrible. That first gnawhole probably couldn't be placed worse. Like if you threw a dart and said, is that the worst spot the gnawhole could land? That's as close to as bad as it can be. The next one, B, I'm happy with. That one's okay because it's in a position where my opponent can't really get to it, and it's applying pressure to that top objective, and it's enabling me to play relatively conservatively with my teleports, because I can pop up there, and if it's on the 8-inch line, that's 22 inches, so 6 in. 12, 8, yeah. So if it's on the 8-inch line, I can threaten that objective from the turn I pop up, which is obviously really important. Ideally, I probably want to move it a little bit sort of northwest. It probably wants to be almost in line, I guess, with where you break the table quarter up. But as a starting point, B is not bad. And C is the second worst spot on the whole board. So A is definitely the worst, but C is literally, I am unable to apply pressure to any of those objectives from there. I'm unable to cast spells like Howling Warp Gull that has a massive 26-inch range, right? Can't really threaten it from there. The reason that I put it in the corner was that I could protect my Vermin Lords early game, and then maybe teleport them elsewhere if I needed them to get into the fray. And because it was a piece of arcane terrain, I hunted the terrain, right? I saw the terrain. I thought, pairing a gnawhole with terrain, amazing. What I didn't go on to consider is if I'm casting shackles from that far back, I'm only stopping myself from teleporting, right? From running and charging. If I'm casting Howling Warp Gull, I'm probably out of range. If I'm casting Arcane Bolt, I then need to subsequently move my full distance and run just to get the one mortal wound off. Like, it's just, it's safe, and it's bad to place the gnawhole there. So I had to think about it, and I thought, the power of hindsight, what does the gnawhole deployment look like? And this is where I sort of landed. Right. So what I'm now doing is I'm turning the board in two, and I'm deciding to play this game a particular way, and that's to stick to the right hand side of the board. The one that's central I really like, because it gives me an opportunity to go and challenge and contest the bottom left objective, but equally I can just sit there with my two big wizards, nuke his stuff, and sort of still have the opportunity to fall back to the other two, because they're really safely placed. That one that is the middle central one, I think almost needs to be like creating a triangle with the objective. That almost needs to be an objective of your gnawhole placement every time. So I think the gnawhole is going to be incredibly important to the way that successful Skaven armies play, and my placement of them just started to be on the back foot, and it's really good that happened, because it's given me pause to think about it quite a lot since then, and I've come up with a few sort of now generic gnawhole placements that are agnostic of my opponent and agnostic of terrain, so that I think that there's quite an easy trap there around pairing up with things like the arcane terrain, or conversely trying to avoid other types of terrain. But I think you think about what's the optimal position for the gnawhole, what are you trying to achieve with it, and then you go from there, rather than thinking about what are the situational bonuses or deficits of placing it in a particular spot. All right, 1999, here we go. So strategically, I knew that I was outdropping my opponent. He was playing a Soulblight Gravelord's army. The army had 2 units of knights, Blood Knights, that start with a 3-up armor save. It had 2 Vampire Lords that start with a 3-up armor save, 2 units of 10 dogs, 20 Skellies, and the Nonna herself, the dog Nonna. So on the face of it, my army cannot win a straight-up fight with his army. I know that. I know that I can't get through that many wounds and that many returning bodies over the course of the game. So I need to play a different style of game in order to outscore him. And I need to be cognizant of the fact that there's no tabling happening here. I'm not going to kill him and accumulate points later in the game or something like that, right? Ultimately, for me to win the game, maybe I am with 5, 10, 20 models on the board. He has most of his army, but I've skipped ahead in the scoreboard in the earlier bid game. He splits his army so that the dogs and horses sit on either flank and can therefore sort of do a bit of a pincer movement around the top and bottom objectives. And then conversely, I deploy awfully down in the bottom right corner here. So I've got my unit set up in a pretty typical fashion for a screening army, and that's across the whole of the deployment zone, and in such a way that they're outside his maximum threat range, which for turn 1 is 22 inches. I've then got my 20s sat back, and my 2 yellow boys down the bottom are my 2 Vermin Lords. So I'm running in this game the Warp Seer and the Deceiver, and then off the board I've got 20 gutter runners, and I've got an assassin who's got the artifact that's going to stop him from piling in and be -1 to hit. Like that artifact in this particular matchup, I pop out, I'm 6 inches away, I stop Vordry or I stop a Vampire Lord on a dragon, participating in the game for a whole combat phase, and then I can pin them as well with the Death Master is a really, really strong ability. I mean, not as strong against those 2 particular models because of the range of their bites. They've got the 3-inch bites, and because they both have a shooting attack which can one-shot a Death Master. But nonetheless, it is still good, and something that I didn't take advantage of in this game. I misplayed. But what I do is I pre-game move, and I move a model from, and I'll circle this unit. Hopefully this doesn't ruin the prezzo. I move a model from this unit of 10 rats, right? And I move him up to this objective. And I sit him so that he's just outside 22 of both of the dog units, but he's on this objective. And the reason I did that, I used my massive brain, and I thought, I'm going to get an extra command point. How good is that? And this is for my army that regularly generates 2 or 3 more command points than I need in a battle round. So, I'm up here. He has a quick peruse of the battle tactics and says, cool, I'll take Conquer in the first battle round. He moves the skeletons, right? He moves 2 skeletons onto that central objective and gains 2 victory points. So the trade that I've made by moving a gutter runner onto that central objective, I've given him an easy round 1 battle tactic, and one that I can deny in other battle, like later in the game when I'm swarming the objectives. There's one that I can actually deny. It's one where I can outbody him and make that quite difficult for him. But that as a starting point just puts me at a deficit, right? I've given away an easy one, and he's still got all these monster ones up his sleeve that he can go and use. So the other thing I do at the start of the game, which is another mistake, is that I select his 2 dragons to be the target of my Clan Eshin special rule. So Masters of Murder, when you've got a Clan Eshin hero, you identify an opposing character, and then for the whole game, your army rerolls to wound against them from shooting and melee. So rerolls super rare at the moment. Doing it in both shooting and melee with an army that generates as many attacks as mine, like we're talking, 150, 160 attacks a turn. It's a really, really strong ability. So I chose the 2 vampires. They've got a 3+ save and they've got 14 wounds. The turns that I target them, he very easily can have one of Mystic Shield, My Favorite Day on Earth, or All Out Defense up, so they're realistically on a 2+ save, and you've got to do 14 wounds because they have access to healing in the hero phase via the generic heroic actions, and then they've got access to healing through having a swig of their Chalice of Blood, and then they've got access to healing if they kill things in the combat phase. And against my army, it's not a question of if, it's a question of sort of how many. If they charge me, they're going to be killing quite a lot. So they're poor choices. The Nonna, what's her name? Belladama. Belladama's a support piece, right? She's got 9 wounds at a 4+ save. And in order to get the most out of her buffs, which are like exploding 6s and 6-inch pile-ins and all this sort of stuff, like an amazing model, amazing utility piece, she needs to be in the front lines because they're wholly within ability. So he needs to move her up into a zone where she's going to be in range of my shooting, and things like the gutter runners that pop up off the side of the board, like 15 gutter runners, if they ran into her, if they got a charge off on her with Rend 1, and this is the stats that they can have in combat, hitting on 3s, hitting on 2s, wounding on 3s, re-rolling to wounds, with 2 Rem 1 attacks each, they're going to kill her, right? So that was just a straight out mistake, and it's one that cost me, because if I was able to take her out, it would have significantly hampered the effectiveness of a lot of his other stuff. So it's just a learning, right? You got to have think about not what's the best return on investment, because obviously killing a dragon is killing like a lot of his damage output. It's killing 400 points worth of the army, 450 maybe even nowadays. But it's like, but what's the likelihood? And there needs to be some sort of consideration where you're measuring those two things against each other, and I just didn't do that. So yeah, that was obviously a big mistake. The other thing is like just that gnawhole placement, the first gnawhole I talked about, he just moved his dragon over, and he does a monstrous rampage, and it's like smash it to rubble, yep, it's gone. And it's just like, that is a really important piece for my army. It's a force multiplier, it's a blocker, it's something that gives me mobility. Like, it has so many things that it can do for me, and to just cede one of the three of those for no reason, no return, like, it didn't take him out of the game. That's just really poor play on my behalf. So anyway, he moves centrally with those skellies. Two of them take the middle objective. I managed to steal it back and get the double. I then target the skeletons as the target of broken ranks. But because I've got this gnawhole so far back here, let's go with a different color. Let's go purple, because I've got this gnawhole so far back here, and this wizard didn't move up far enough in my first turn because I wanted to continue to utilize the +1 to cast, or +2 in reality, because there's some arcane there as well. I can't get those skeletons. They're over here, right? I can't get them. So because of that, I then need to waste my Vermin Lord Deceiver's attacks in combat. I have to get him into combat with the skeletons, who throughout the turn have got all that defense up, so they're on a 4-up save in both the shooting and the combat phase. They've got a 6-up after save, but their banner gives them reroll 1s to their deathless minions, so 4-up save, 6-up ward, rerolling 1s for the ward. They actually become significantly more durable than I anticipate, and unfortunately the sum of the damage output without the Warpseer throwing his orb and being able to get Howling Warp Gale off at them for 2d6 additional mortal wounds means that, you know, I waste my Deceiver, and then my Deceiver's sort of in the middle of the board, and he's able to swing around with the horses and both dragons and kill enough of my army that the game is then out of my reach. And realistically, there's a problem of strategy here. It's like the decisions I made in game, I think were suboptimal and poor. Conversely, I think the decisions he made in game in terms of where he moved his models and the pressure that he was applying at particular points, and being able to concentrate his power, concentrate the 2 dragons, and concentrate the Balladoma, so that they were in this little triangle, all augmenting each other and equally protecting each other, meant that, you know, I was just outplayed on the table, and that happens. And you sort of go, well, that, like, I'm happy to lose where I can learn stuff, so that like is not something I'm going to lose any sleep about. But me just deploying like an absolute muppet and having the wrong overarching strategy, and my strategy was that I'm going to challenge all 3 objectives, so that he has to spread his army, because he's only actually got 5 units with bodies. And then he needs to deploy his dragons back far enough that I don't take first turn before he's able to get Mystic Shield up and put, 160 odd shots into them. So he has to deploy back in order to avoid an alpha. It's not an alpha in the sense that I punch through his army. It's an alpha in the sense that I take out the 2 particular pieces that scare me the most. But he has to deploy back to sort of avoid that situation. But yeah, I think, on balance, the mistake that I made was my strategy. My strategy was to contest all 3 objectives, and I should never have done that. What I should have deployed is more like this. Okay. So this here is where I'd sort of like to start the game. I have a unit of 10 rats that can pre-game move, and they can go up here and block space, or they could go straight across and they can contest this objective here. Obviously, my gnawholes would be moved to those more optimal places that we mentioned earlier, and then I just sit in this half of the board and I just leave that other third objective down there for him, and he can hold that if he wants. But as I mentioned, he's only got 5 units. If he sends just dogs down there, I'm confident that the 20 gutter runners that pop up kill the dogs, and then all of a sudden he's in a situation where he's got to have a think about, well, am I going to send something back, or am I just going to challenge the middle and top objectives? And what this enables my army to do is to actually play to its strength, and that's to have lines of chaff in a row. He's only got 2 models that fly. Both of those models are behind his own screens, so I then have the opportunity, right, to pin them in for as long as possible. I can pop my assassin out at any time and stop one of those really important combats and fights, and then ultimately we have a skirmish that goes for 2 turns. Turns 1 and 2, where we both probably trade that middle objective for hold 1, hold 2, hold more. We work out our secondaries, and then it comes down to that priority in the turn 3 priority. And if whomever goes second removes one, I'm in a position with the combination of my gnawholes and my inherent speed and the fact that I can run and shoot, that I can go and challenge that bottom left objective if that one remains and the top right one goes. And if I win the priority and I'm able to remove the objective that he's holding, I can force him to split his army and split his power. And like I say, I can't beat Soulblight Gravelords in a straight up fight. I think they're one of the strongest armies in the game at the moment. But what I can do is be a sneaky rat and try and get them to spread the board. So I guess, yeah, in balance, I played poorly. My opponent played well, but I feel like I took a lot out of the game. And I feel like it's given me a lot to think about in terms of the way that I use my army's unique and special rules, and the way that I have to try and play my own game and not get sucked into a straight-up fight. Because if I get sucked into a straight-up fight with Soulblight, they will beat me. If I get sucked into a straight-up shootout with Zench or Seraphon, they'll shoot me off. So it's always about, like, all right, how does this army function, and how can I get the most out of it? And I certainly didn't in that particular game. But I think in terms of if you make a mistake and then you're able to learn from it and adapt in future games, it's probably more valuable overall than a win anyway. So that's the game, and that's the mistakes that I'd sort of made. I probably made a heap of micro mistakes as well in terms of positioning of individual units. I did actually take a number of photos while I played, and of course I've deleted them from my phone, and I go through, I literally, like from the last 30 days, I literally have 80 photographs of coffee, and I have 0 photos of that game. So that's great. That's really good sort of records management. Anyway, let's jump into where the let's jump into where the list has evolved to now. So following that game and a number of others, I've managed to get quite a few reps in, and the list is evolving, and I'm loving playing the Skaven. I'm mixing it up, so I'm going to take a Deceiver as the general, and basically what that means is I'm pivoting out of pure Eshin to a list that is predominantly Eshin. So I no longer have a Master Clan General, and I've got some different units in there. So he's got the Unrivaled Killer, which is rerolls to hit against a unit that I've targeted through that rule I mentioned earlier, how Clan Eshin can choose a hero in the opposing army for each hero they have. So that would give him reroll to hit and reroll to wound. And his damage profile is 6 attacks, and it's typically 2s and 2s. Ren 3, damage D3 +1. So that's ridiculous. That is good enough. Outside of the superheroes, outside the Gotreks, Marathi, Archaon, the Gash, that's good enough to take most things in the game out. So that's really cool. And I've got the artifact, the Shadow Magnet Trinket on him. And what that does is it enables him once per game to fight first. And the reason that is super important is it means that both he and Screech Vermin King can double team an opposing monster, and one of them can make a roar and stop them using their all-out defense, and then the other one can use +1 to hit, and then they've both got Ren 3 weapons. So by having him fight first and then have Screech come in after, that means you basically kill most things in the game. Equally, what it enables him to do is be used as bait. So you could charge into him, and then utilizing the Skaven rule, which is that you can retreat instead of fight. You could fight at the start of the combat phase and then retreat away. And most armies don't have a way of playing around that at the moment. So that's really strong. I've then got Screech in there. I've been oscillating, right? The Screech and the Warpseer are both excellent pieces. They are too expensive to have them both in the same unit. Screech has greater utility. He's able to access a number of different rules that you determine based on the in-game situation. So he's got 6 to choose from, and he can only ever use them once per game, right? So you cycle through them and work out when you're going to use them. The Warp Seer, on the other hand, is way more reliable. He offers you battle shock immunity and CP generation. So the Warp Seer is a super reliable piece, comes with +1 armor save. He's harder to kill, and he's better at doing things to support the army. Screech can actually support the army, but also go and kill things, and that's what I want more of. I've then retained the Deathmaster. Oh man, he's so bad. Oh, he's so bad. He's got the Cube of Mist, though, and the artifact is just so good. So I would probably pay 150 points for the Cube of Mists without a model. If that was the price, if that was the asking price, if they said a Skaven army is now 1,850 points, but every army starts with this special rule that a model's got the Cube of Mist, I'd be like, yeah, okay, cool, I'll do that. So, the Deathmaster's not worth 115, but the artifact he carries adds tremendous value to the army. And I've now snuck in a Plague Priest as well. So the Plague Priest is there because he's got the Prayer Curse. So the limitation with Curse, right, is that you have to be within 9 inches. So it means an early game curse is very difficult to pull off. However, with Skaven, the Deceiver can teleport him 6 inches away. So I can sit the Deceiver out of Unbind range, cast his War Scroll spell, teleport the Plague Priest, and then plonk the Plague Priest down in curse range within 9. But equally what I can do is I can put him down next to a gnawhole and he gets +1 to his chanting. So then he's more likely to cast curse. Then if he hits a 6, it's just GG. If the Plague Priest rolls a 6 turn 1 or turn 2, that can be game altering. So by doing that, you get access to the Great Plagues, and they're amazing, and they are worthy of a show on their own. So I'm not I won't do any spoilers. I'm gonna jump on Vince's show in a couple of weeks to talk rats, and I'll save some of my priest tech till then, because some of the things you can do are outrageous, and I guess that's a little teaser for a few weeks' time. I've then got 3 units of 20 clan rats. I've said they've got spears. They could have spears or hand weapons. It doesn't really matter. That because you're not getting the big units anymore, I don't think you care all that much about the buffs or whatever. So the 2-inch range is fine for the spears. One of those units is going to have a warp fire thrower, so that's going to give me even more mortal wound output. So the curse and the rusty spears, the introduction of Screech instead of the warp seer, all of these things are adding sort of more mortal wound output, which I think the army needs to complement its volume. So there's this whole thing about having quantity, and it's another thing about having quality. I'm now a better balance than where I originally started. I mean, we never thought that the original list was going to be a world beater. It's done pretty well, but it's not the sort of list that is going to present somebody on the top table challenges in the final round of an event. Like if I was running the Zench Can't Retreat Summoning Horde, or if I was running the Namadi gun line, I wouldn't be worried about Clan Eshin, right? But as we progressively cycle through the book, I think perhaps some of the other builds are going to pose more of a threat. So we've got the Warp Fire Thrower, then we've still got our 40 Night Runners across 4 units, and the 20 Gutter Runners in 2 units of 10, and the Soul Snare Shackles. Now for me at the moment, both Soul Snare Shackles and the Chronomatic Cogs are game-breakingly good. Like they're good to the point that I think an intervention is necessary through the big FAQ. Like it would be disappointing if their War Scroll isn't changed or their points aren't adjusted significantly. That's probably more true of Cogs than Shackles, but they are both gross, and I think that they're gross to the point of that they could genuinely affect one player's ability to have fun in a particular game, and I think that's problematic. So hopefully we can see that fixed. But I did see they're about to start repackaging the box, which makes me think that they want them probably to be strong. All right, that's enough tinfoil hat time. That's where the list's headed. I'm really loving playing it. I've got an event coming up in a couple of weeks, GCon 3. Fingers crossed that the event proceeds, and if it does, this is almost certainly what I'll run, unless something deranged comes into my mind ahead of time. I just thought I'll have a quick chat about Legion of the First Prince as well. This is the core. The core is Kairos, a core Demon Prince, and Balakor. Then you just take 995 points to taste. You take whatever you want to fill this out, and it is filth. This to me is the apex predator in the meta at the moment. The Khorne Demon Prince has a ginormous bubble that slows you down, and then Kairos Fate Weaver has the ability to manipulate dice. That can slow you down, that can do a whole host of other things that are game-breakingly good. He also has one of the best War Scroll spells in the game, and that War Scroll spell generally means that he's going to probably be coupled with the Umbral Spell Portal. So this is probably 1075 or 1080, depending on what the portal is at the moment, leaving you with about like 920, because then he can do significant mortal wounds, generate spawns into combat, a host of other things. So yeah, the Kairos and Slaves to Darkness Khorne Demon Prince, and then the trio is rounded out with Balakor, who has the ability to look at someone and then stop them from doing things for a whole turn. And the three of those together are just ridiculous. And in this particular army, they get a 5-up damage prevention roll or ward save, and they also have access to summoning. So across the course of the game, even if it feels like investing 1,000 points in 3 models is significant, across the course of the game there's the capacity there for you to actually generate some pretty significant summoning. And I mean, 1,000 points, you could take 30 Plague Bearers, Sloppity Bowl Piper, right? And then you stop people from piling in. You have 30 guys that have a 5-up after save and innate debuffs to hit that don't need to be near the Khorne General to do their thing. You can take cheap units that are battle line, like the Flesh Hounds, 105 points, get an Unbind, run around, not subjected to the bad coherency rules. Reasonably tanky, particularly when you consider the 5-up after save. You could take a unit of 30 pink horrors if you wanted, like 30 pinks, 150 wounds, 5-up after save. You're probably taking the Emerald Life Swarm then as well. You have an ability to manipulate your dice through Kairos. You can get those ones if you need them. You can bring back models through Rally, or Rally and 30 pinks with a 5-up after save is gross. Let's not talk about that. The core of this army is the strongest control core that has ever existed in Age of Sigmar, and I anticipate in the hands of good generals that this is one that consistently ruins weekends. This is one where not only do you win, but you just stop your opponent from doing anything. So it's an interesting one, that's for sure. All right, let's do some shout outs. First off, I want to shout out my eBay hombre. There's this dude that I bought a Dark Elf army from earlier in the year, and he's really lovely. And we just exchanged some messages, and we're talking Hammer. And then more recently, I bought some Khorne Demons off him with the intent of using them in a Legion of the First Prince army. And he sent me a little message. I've just blacked some stuff out because I don't know if he wants his personal details blathered around, right? But he's like, hey man, I'll post these soon. We broke his ankle, so it's hard for him to get to the post office. And he's like, are they good in Age of Sigmar 3? So that's pretty cool. Like, the poor bugger, he's broken his ankle. And unfortunately, I misread it. It's like, zero stress, breaks happen. I should be able to fix it pretty easy. So it's like, you know that Homer meme where he just falls back into the tree? Oh my God. That's the worst thing I've done since the lady at the cafe said, do you want trays with your coffee? And I was like, good, thanks. How about you? And for the rest of that day, I didn't talk. Let's talk about mental health as well. We're doing shout outs. Let's just tackle this one head on, right? So I'm smashing the antidepressants at the moment. I'm meditating for an hour. I exercise every day. I paint. I speak to friends. And, even sometimes that's not enough. So I just want to say, take care of yourselves. Look out for your mates. It feels like we're in this existential, capitalist, dystopian abyss, right? We live in this era where I feel like it's everyone's responsibility to help their friends. And, we're not wired to do it alone. So look after your own mental health, but also look out for your friends as well. Look out for your mates. On the topic of mates, oh man, I've got so much death. I've got tens of thousands of points of death, and of course the army that I want to do is Feck, and I don't have any. I'm obsessing over them at the moment. I think the loss of battalions for them has completely opened up the book, because they were historically all about, is that the Dead Watch build, or is that the Smash Bat build, or is that and then all of the builds all of the dominant builds at any rate. The Ghoul Patrol is just the King's Ghouls. They're all built around those battalions, and the absence of the battalions opens your eyes to all of the possibilities in that book. And I think it's such a fantastic and interesting book, and the lore's amazing. And me and my mate Kyle, like, we talk Warhammer every day, and we named our sons the same. We message each other every day in gibberish like Grace is. We're both obsessed with Skaven. We've got the same tattoo, and now we're both eyeing Feck. So this is dangerous. This is dangerous ground. And I was doing some research on the internet, and I found the coolest Feck army ever. Now, I don't know who the owner of this one is, but I absolutely love it. So if you've come across this in your journeys, there's no Star Drake in the Feck book. That's probably the one thing that I would highlight. I don't know, we don't really do proxies in Australia. I don't know why you would do that. But apart from the Star Drake, wow, this army is amazing. It just sort of blew me away. So if that one's for sale, I might even try and buy it if I can find the original artist. All right, that's us for today. I'll speak to you all very soon. I'm loving Age of Sigmar 3. I do have 2 events coming up. I am in lockdown. I do highly doubt I'll be able to go to both. I do think that will have an enduring and debilitating impact on me as a human, but that's cool. We'll cross that bridge when we get there, and I'm looking forward to hopefully seeing you on the tabletop soon, or hearing from you on the YouTubes or the Twitter. Bye.